What if I told you that the moment he whispered those words, "We're going tomorrow, Mom. I've sold your beach house." He set into motion a chain of psychological events that would reveal a truth no one in his family was prepared to face, and before we go deeper into this story, make sure you stay till the end, because every twist in this true-to-life psychological breakdown carries a lesson that could change the way you understand human behavior, family loyalty, and emotional manipulation forever. So let's begin with the moment everything started to fall apart, the moment when Daniel stood in the living room. Holding papers in his trembling hand, believing he had taken the most logical step for the future, unaware that logic does not always align with emotional psychology, especially with someone who has spent her entire life building her identity around a place, a memory, or a symbol like his mother had done with her beloved beach house, the one place where she felt her late husband's presence, where she found silence comforting rather than frightening, and where every corner of the old wooden floorboards whispered a memory she was not ready to let go of. But Daniel, blinded by the pressure of financial burden, corporate stress, and the subtle but powerful psychological effect of decision fatigue, thought selling the beach house was an act of responsibility, even love, because he believed he was protecting his mother from future instability. And yet, when he finally gathered the courage to tell her, he did not expect the look in her eyes, not anger, not disappointment, but something far more unsettling, an expression of deep, quiet recognition, as if she had already known something like this was coming, as if she had been preparing for a truth she never wanted to face. And in that silence Daniel felt, for the first time, the crushing weight of emotional guilt, a psychological state where the mind loops endlessly over a decision trying to justify itself while simultaneously questioning everything. And his mother, standing by the old window where she used to watch seagulls gather at dawn, simply asked, "Why didn't you ask me first?" And that question tore into Daniel more deeply than any shout could have, because he realized that in his attempt to protect her, he had taken away her autonomy, and autonomy is a core psychological need, one that fuels identity, purpose, and even emotional stability. But the story doesn't end there, because what Daniel didn't know was that his mother had been hiding something from him for months, something that changed the meaning of everything he believed about their future, something that made his decision to sell the beach house not only emotionally devastating but also tragically ironic, because she reached into the drawer beneath the window and pulled out an envelope addressed to him, one she had planned to give him when the time was right, and inside it was a letter revealing the frightening truth she had tried to protect him from. She had been diagnosed with early-stage memory decline, the beginnings of something she was terrified to name out loud, and the beach house was where she remembered best, the place her mind held onto with the most clarity, the place where her memories were anchored. And suddenly Daniel felt the world tilt, because he realized the beach house wasn't just a property, it was her lifeline, the last piece of her mental map that hadn't begun to fade. And his mother explained, with tears she had been holding back for weeks, that she wanted to spend her remaining lucid years in the one place that still felt like home, the place where her brain still recognized the sound of waves, the scent of ocean wind, and the warmth of sunlight on the balcony where she once read bedtime stories to him. And in that moment Daniel felt a flood of psychological conflict, the clash between rational decision-making and emotional truth, between responsibility and regret, between what he thought was best and what she actually needed. And if you've ever found yourself torn between logic and love, between protecting someone and accidentally hurting them in the process, then you already understand the painful dilemma Daniel was facing, a dilemma made even more intense by the realization that in his attempt to secure their future, he may have taken away the one place that held his mother's past. So if you're still following this story and want to know how the truth unraveled further, stay right here, because the next part reveals the moment everything changed again. The moment Daniel realized what his mother had been hiding, something inside him shifted in a way he couldn't quite explain, as though every memory he had ever formed inside that beach house rose to the surface all at once. The birthdays on the sand, the stormy nights spent listening to thunder, the simple breakfasts cooked by his mom while sunlight spilled across the kitchen counter. All of it crashed into him with the force of emotional clarity, and he understood that decisions driven by stress often silence the deeper voice inside us that tells us what truly matters. So he rushed to cancel the sale, hoping he wasn't too late, hoping the psychological power of regret wouldn't become a permanent weight on his conscience. But the buyer had already signed, the papers already processed, and the finality of that moment made Daniel feel something far more paralyzing than sadness, helplessness, a psychological state in which the mind feels stripped of control. And he sank into the realization that he had taken away something irreplaceable from the person who had given him everything. But his mother, instead of breaking down the way he feared, simply touched his shoulder gently and said she already knew he had done it for what he thought was the right reason, and that understanding cracked him open even more because forgiveness offered too quickly can feel like a mirror, forcing you to confront yourself honestly, without excuses. And as they sat together that evening, she told him something he had never known, something that reframed the entire emotional landscape of their lives. The beach house had been purchased not by his father alone, but by both of them as a promise they made when Daniel was just a toddler, that no matter how difficult life became they would always have one place of peace, one place where the world felt soft and time felt slow. And now, with her memory slipping piece by piece, that promise mattered more than ever, and Daniel, hearing this, felt a kind of internal collapse, not loud, not dramatic, but a silent unraveling of all the defenses he had built up over years of adulthood. And he realized that sometimes the most powerful psychological lessons are the ones that come wrapped in pain, the ones that force you to confront what you value, not in theory but in reality. And his mother, sensing his emotional turmoil, told him that losing the house wasn't the real tragedy, because places can be recreated, rebuilt, or rediscovered. But what she feared most was losing herself, losing the ability to remember the son she raised and the life they built. And for the first time Daniel understood that her fear wasn't about the beach house, it was about the slow, quiet fading of identity, and that understanding lit something inside him, a resolve, a fierce determination to help her preserve whatever memories she still held. So he began recording conversations with her, writing down her stories, recreating the meals they once shared at the beach house, even bringing home shells and sand from the shoreline to surround her with sensory triggers that psychologists say can slow memory deterioration. And day by day, he watched something incredible happen, not a cure, not a reversal, but a strengthening of her emotional presence, because while memories fade, emotional connections often remain rooted far longer. And one day, months later, something unexpected happened. The buyer of the beach house contacted Daniel, explaining that he had learned about his mother's condition through a neighbor and wanted to offer them the chance to rent the place whenever they needed. And though it wasn't ownership, it restored a part of what had been lost, giving his mother a familiar space to breathe, to remember, to feel whole. And Daniel realized then a psychological truth that people often forget: sometimes life offers second chances, not in the form we want, but in the form we need. And he made it his mission to ensure that every remaining moment with his mother was filled with presence, patience, and understanding, because in the end, the greatest gift we can give someone we love is not a house, not financial stability, not a grand gesture, but our time, our attention, and our willingness to sit with them in their most vulnerable moments. And if you've made it this far, you already know this story isn't just about a beach house. It's about the fragile beauty of human memory, the psychology of guilt and forgiveness, and the emotional courage it takes to face the truth even when it breaks your heart. So before we end, remember this: cherish the people who shaped you, listen before you decide, and never underestimate how deeply your smallest choices can affect someone else's world. As the months continued to unfold with a mixture of fleeting clarity and quiet forgetting, Daniel found himself learning more about human resilience than any book, therapist, or life experience had ever taught him, because every day with his mother became a fragile blend of remembering what mattered and letting go of what didn't. And one afternoon, while they were sitting on the porch of their own home, far from the ocean yet still connected to it through memories she held like precious stones, his mother asked him a question that startled him, not because of its content, but because of the awareness behind it. As she turned to him with a steady gaze and said, "Daniel, do you think memories are borrowed or earned?" And that question lingered in the air with surprising weight, revealing that even when her mind faltered, her emotional intelligence remained almost painfully sharp. And Daniel took a slow breath before answering, struggling to find words that would honor the depth of what she was asking. And he finally said that he believed memories were a mixture of both, that we earn them through the people we love and borrow them from the moments we wish we could relive forever. And his mother smiled faintly, the kind of smile that breaks and heals you at the same time, and she reached for his hand with fingers that had once braided his hair, held his fears, and wiped his tears. And she whispered that she had been thinking a lot about the beach house lately, not with regret, but with gratitude, because it had given her years of joy, comfort, and identity. And she wanted him to know that letting it go didn't erase anything, it only reminded her of how deeply she had lived. And that realization left Daniel speechless, because he couldn't understand how someone facing memory decline could be the one comforting him, guiding him, teaching him. And yet that was the strange, beautiful truth about certain types of loss: they sharpen what remains, they highlight the emotional Truths the mind refuses to release, and in the days that followed Daniel began noticing something else. His mother wasn't just losing memories, she was also forming new emotional imprints, subtle but powerful ones, moments where she would tell him she felt safe, or that his presence made her calm, or that the sound of his voice reminded her of everything she still recognized in the world. And Daniel realized that even if she forgot the details of their lives together, she would never forget the feeling of being loved by him, and that psychological truth, emotional memory outlasting factual memory, became the core of every decision he made for her. So he adjusted his routine to be more present, more attentive, more attuned to her emotional cues, and he noticed how sensory details helped her feel anchored, the soft sound of wind chimes, the warm scent of vanilla tea, the texture of knitted blankets she used for decades, and one evening as he played an old lullaby she once sang to him, her eyes suddenly lit up with recognition and she hummed along, not missing a note, proving once again that music has a way of unlocking parts of the mind that even time cannot fully erase. And as he watched her, a powerful realization washed over him. This journey wasn't about trying to keep her from forgetting, it was about giving her moments she didn't need to remember in order to feel. And around that time something unexpected happened again. The new owner of the beach house reached out with an idea that would change everything, explaining that he was planning to renovate the place and wanted to incorporate something from its history, specifically something personal, something meaningful, something that honored the family who had loved it for so long. And he invited Daniel and his mother to visit one last time before the renovations began, and although Daniel was hesitant at first, fearing it might overwhelm her emotionally, his mother said she wanted to go, that she needed to go, and so they returned to the coastline where the sky seemed larger and the wind gentler, and this time the house looked slightly different, cleaner, brighter, touched by someone else's vision but still holding the heartbeat of the past within its walls, and as they stepped inside, the owner showed them a small wooden corner he planned to preserve entirely, a carved message Daniel's father had etched decades ago that read, "For every tomorrow we'll face together." And when Daniel's mother saw it, her breath caught in her throat, not from sorrow but from the powerful recognition of a memory she feared she had lost, and she rested her hand over the carving, whispering her husband's name with a clarity Daniel hadn't heard in months, and that moment became a turning point for Daniel, teaching him the extraordinary resilience of the human mind, how deeply love can carve itself into someone's soul, and how even fading memories can spark awake when touched by something familiar, something true, something emotionally alive. And on their way home she told him that she knew she might not stay herself forever, but she wanted him to promise her one thing, to live fully, not cautiously, not fearfully, because life doesn't wait for perfect timing, and memories don't last by force, they last by meaning. And Daniel promised her with a trembling voice that he would carry her stories, her strength, and her love into every tomorrow he faced. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in soft gold, Daniel realized that this journey was no longer about loss at all, it was about transformation, acceptance, and the deep psychological truth that love is not measured by how much we remember, but by how much we feel, how much we give, and how deeply we remain connected even as time tries to take things away.